Your knowledge and skills are your primary tools as a musician. Great music is made with three types of those tools: technique, theory, and gear or equipment knowledge. Every musician needs all three to be their best, and we guitar and bass players need a balance of those special skills to grow fastest. Let's dig in. I'm Andy Schneider, career musician turned guitar coach, producer and author of over 100 books from my Seeing Music publishing company. I was a high school band nerd, then a devoted jazz guy, and then a backing musician for great artists in every type of music. From Austin to Nashville to New York City, I've learned from my musical experiences and the great musicians that were there with me. I'm a self-taught guitarist, but I was lucky enough to get the right bits of education early on in my career. Pairing that with the many conversations I've had with much more experienced musicians, I was on the path to success, a path that let me build my own skills and become the experienced, confident musician audiences enjoy today. I created the Guitar Nerd podcast to give you simple steps to building and growing your musical knowledge, having greater abilities, and getting that amazing music that's inside of you out and into the world where we can all enjoy it. If you're a beginner or an experienced guitar or bass player and you want to make fantastic music, you are in the right place, my friend. Now let's get nerdy. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Andy Schneider. You're listening to Guitar Nerd. This is episode 1, brand spanking new podcast. I'm super excited about it. This podcast has been on my bucket list for many months as I've thought about how I can take my guitar teaching to a brand new audience. And you're it. You found it. Thank you very much. If you're a guitar player or a bass player at any level, I hope to make this series for you. I can't think of a single person that I've ever met, guitar player, who at any level, including the pros, didn't consider themselves a learner. Wasn't looking to learn the next awesome thing. Why? Because, well, we love what we do. It's what got us to pick up an instrument in the first place. I started the world as a bass player, among some other things, and it wasn't for many years until I picked up a guitar that I considered myself a guitar player. And now I find myself back in the bass player chair. I'm doing a lot more bass playing these days. I love it. I love it. And a little secret, I'm still playing my very first bass guitar. Is still my main trusty axe. It's an old Gibson from the 70s. Everything old becomes new again, right? So with that in mind, I just thought I'd give you a little preview about what we're going to be talking about here on the show. This is going to be a show for those of you hungry for knowledge. As am I. As was I when I started my music career. I started, with lessons from my mom early on the piano, and then I went to high school and went through band practice and the jazz band program, and then I went off to college and played jazz for a bunch of people and found myself in all kinds of musical situations that meant I had to adapt. I had to take the skills that I had, the bits of technique, the little bits of music theory that I knew, and start piecing them together, trying to make sense of the puzzle. Later on, I became a guitar teacher. And even further later on, I started writing books about it because I realized that everybody that walked through my door started in the same place. And I thought, well, I could just as easily put their first few lessons down in this book. So that became one of my first books, was kind of my philosophy on how you should start learning guitar. And that brings us to here. I've got over 100 books out now. If you've been to Amazon, you've probably seen the Seeing Music books. And if you bought one, thank you very much. That's been my livelihood for about the last 5 years. I'm excited to be here sharing with you the bits of knowledge that I've accumulated over my professional career. I was lucky to have somebody wake me up to just enough of the information when I was young that I was able to find my way and be a detective and assemble a whole career's worth of knowledge that now I feel very comfortable walking in, sitting in on anybody's gig, making music with them. I've done everything from singer-songwriter to classic rock stuff and country and jazz and heavy metal. And it's all built on the same foundations. And those are the foundations that we're going to be talking about here. Now, this episode is a good place to start because you may be wondering where to go next, what to turn to next, what should I learn next. There's guitar learning all around you, and it's really awesome these days. Resources like YouTube are fantastic. It used to be limited to 1 or 2 guitar player magazines that we sat around by the mailbox waiting for them to come in once a month. And that was about all the guitar learning I had. I grew up in the country, didn't have anybody around me that was a professional musician or a member of the family, so I had to assemble it. Now you've got YouTube, you've got a million resources, and I know you've got your favorites. I do too. I'm a habitual learner. So let's add this podcast to the list of things we do, because I think it's these conversations between musicians that are the richest. Whenever I'm in a jam, I think about how to get out of it, like, how am I going to play an interesting solo for this band that I barely know, but they've asked me to sit in. What am I going to do? And I go back to bits of knowledge that somebody laid on me, probably on some gig or just a late night hang where we sit around listening to music, and as musicians do, and talking about what we're hearing and what the artists are doing. Those are rich conversations that pay off big time later. And they're just things that we musicians love to do. So this is my way of, I don't know if it's given back or not, but I get a lot out of it, just being able to share with you the little bits that I've accumulated. And recently somebody had asked, how should I continue learning? Like, where should I turn next? What should I think about? And I thought about for a while how to answer that. It took me a minute. And I realized that all of our knowledge as musicians can be attributed to one of 3 areas. And I call it the skill triangle. Skill triangle, right? But there's sort of like 3 arms pointing outward on the skill triangle. Areas that we need to be able to play anything well. Are you ready? 1, technique. You got to know where to put your fingers. Number 2, music theory, right? Why should I put my fingers there? Why is that C major chord that? Why is it those notes? That's music theory. And the third thing is gear knowledge. Knowing enough about your instrument, family of instrument, and all the little bits that we have as guitar and bass players that are pretty unique, right? Like vocalists don't have as many pedals that they like to run through as we do. Not all. Some have pedals. Pretty cool. But we have acoustic guitars, electric guitars, all the stuff that's inside the guitar and outside of the guitar that we plug and chain and put together, and there's question marks above everybody's heads about what these things are, how to deal with them, how to get a better result. So those three areas, technique, theory, and gear knowledge, are a must. Without any of them, you kind of become like a person with a one-sided diet. You only eat starches, carbs only. That's bad. That's just bad. Got to have a balance, right? Got to have a little bit of meats, a little bit of veggies. Music is the same way. You can't survive on one of those three things alone. Imagine a person who's all technique. And as I run this down, see if you hear yourself. Imagine a person who's all technique, no theory. Well, okay, so that person has learned lots of bits of where to put their fingers, how to put their fingers, but no why. So without a why, without knowing the music theory behind here's why this chord leads to that chord, imagine you want to play that song in a different key. Uh-oh. Without understanding why the chords are there, it's impossible. It's just not doable. Imagine a person who's all gear, right? I've known people like this. I probably was a person like this at one point. Gear expert. There's lots of those these days, especially with the prolification. With the abundance, especially these days with the abundance of awesome pedals that are now available, it's quite an array, a dazzling array of options that people have to collect and use really cool new tone tools. But that alone won't get your audience on your side. They'll see through it very quickly. They'll not give you that applause that you know you need. And I would say you yourself, if you were hearing yourself as being a big gearhead, but haven't maybe done the homework yet for the technique and the music theory, you probably aren't giving yourself the applause that you want, right? And I've also known people that were all music theory and very little technique, very little gear knowledge, but they had their theory down. I knew jazz fans like this who they tend to be real cerebral cats anyway, right? Like you get points for being intellectual, for having your ideas together. That's what music theory can be. You can take it way, way out there, and I've seen people do that. But the end result is a little lopsided. It's not as great as it could be if they put a little bit more of that energy into developing technique or the gear knowledge to get them the perfect tone that allows one note to change a whole room's opinion. That's the great power in having balance in all of these things. Sometimes, I mentioned sometimes I have to jump up on stage and play a solo with somebody I barely met. I've got 3 different planks I can stand on. I might have to play something really heady, right? Like pull out some altered scales, use my music theory bucket, dip deep into there, and wow them with that. Other times, speed and some technique, some awesome, cool bends that I've learned, that'll get me out of a jam. Other times, if I can, I'll rely on that gear to give me the sweetest tone ever, so that even if I decide to use just one note, I can do it. I can stop a room with one note if I've got the right tone, right? You need those 3 things. I think everybody wants those 3 things. And the good news is none of them are hard to learn. There are lots and lots of little collected bits. Picture like your wall of your bedroom just covered with stamps from your stamp collection. Stamp from all over the world. There's one from Zimbabwe. There's one from the U.S. It's from the 30s. Ooh, neat. It's just covered with colorful stamps. That's going to be your music knowledge collection. That's going to be inside your brain. And the great thing, too, about learning this stuff, not only is it not hard, it's fun to learn, and you get to keep it. It'll be there forever. Trust me. I still am alarmed at how many things I remember from the 90s, from the 80s when I started my professional career. Yeah, I'm that old. I hit the road my birthday in 1987. Yep, I turned 18, and that was my first road gig that day. And I've been learning since before then, just the most amazing array of tidbits that still kind of percolate up to the top. And I go, wow, that was sure lucky that I heard that conversation 30 years ago. So I hope that maybe inside of this podcast, you'll hear a couple of things that will stick with you and that you'll make better music with. Technique, music theory, and gear knowledge. That's what we're going to be exploring from now on in every episode. We're going to pick one of those things and get into it so that you beginners, if you're just starting out, welcome and good job. I want to lay it out there so that you can appreciate it, so that you will have some action steps to putting better technique into your technique bag. And I also want to leave something for the experienced. I want you experienced, seasoned people to also find something in it. You know, I'd heard it said one time, I don't know how true this is. In the martial arts, you go from white belt on your first day through the colors, you become eventually a black belt. And I think this is more of a symbolic thing, but they'll say the place after that, after black belt, you become a master. You might become the teacher. You yourself are a white belt again. I think this is, again, mostly a kind of a concept. But it's really important, even as experienced players, to keep the mindset of a beginner, to always be open to new ways, even though you've found some ways maybe to get around on chords, ways to fiddle your fingers for a solo. Be open and ready for new ways, because there are more ways. And if you want to keep an audience guessing, that's a good idea. You want to keep them guessing. What's that person going to do next? That is how you get them really riled up. And it's how you'll maintain a lot more energy and enthusiasm for yourself and for your craft. If you're keeping yourself guessing, what will I do that next solo? That's a fun place to be in. Ooh, kind of want to go play a solo right now. Say, if you want to, speaking about the skill triangle, if you were to head over to my publishing company is called Seeing Music Books. Tons of books for bass players and guitar players, and on it, right now, I've got a free guide to the skill triangle, and it's a tool that lets you just map out and see in visual form where you're at, what you need to learn next. If you'd like that, it's free. Go grab it at seeingmusicbooks.com. That's seeing music, like not hearing it. Seeing Music Books, seeingmusicbooks.com. The skill triangle guide, I think it will help concretize for you where you need to go, because I wrote the thing and then took it myself, and it's really fun to see in easy form where you're at and what you could maybe use to work on next. In my personal music right now, I'm working on technique. hardcore because I'm doing some stuff with the bass guitar that I've never done before. And I'm pushing myself to do things that even I am going to find interesting. So there you go. I went from black belt to white. I'm a beginner again. And I've learned how to learn through the years. So here I am again, starting at the beginning, learning my little bits of kind of playing lead on the bass, really. I'm finding it completely engaging, and my fuel tank is full. So happy about it. I love talking music. What are you working on these days? I can't wait to hear. Leave me a comment in the show notes. I'm so new at this podcasting thing. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you want to learn. This is that point in the show where I want to address the more experienced people out there who already say like, well, I've got a bunch of technique and yeah, I think I know my theory and I know some about gear too. This is for you. What do you do next? Have you ever felt like your tank was empty? Did you ever feel like, I don't want to go practice. There's nothing to practice. I'm just kind of bored. I'm just watching paint peel on the wall in the practice room. I've got a couple quick ideas for you. What might charge you back up? As I mentioned, I'm playing all new music. I found it was time in my life that I needed to rearrange things. But at other points in my life, I felt the same way. It wasn't time then to start a brand new music project, but I just kind of needed a charge. I needed a supercharge. I needed to charge the batteries. The way I've done it and the way that I've learned from other musicians to do it, try listening to your heroes. Try listening to future heroes of yours. Maybe dive deep. I love tools like Spotify where you can do research. And I can say, what about that old blues player that I keep hearing about? I haven't listened enough to his or her playing. What about whatever fill in the blank kind of thing it is? Find somebody that resonates and try to go deep. And now we've got YouTube, so you can actually go hopefully see them doing their thing. That's another great way to fuel up. Whether you steal a lick from that player or just are energized by their tone, their energy, totally fair way to go. We artists are here not just for the audience, we're here for each other. And that artist would be happy to know that you're digging their work. Another way to go is explore other art forms. I love a day at the museum. Watching what other artists have done blows my mind creatively. I don't know if it just gets the circuits going. And all of a sudden, I am itching to go home. You know, I'm looking at paintings and sculpture and seeing like the wild ideas and times that those people lived through. And I can't wait to get home because I just had one of those ideas run through my head. And I went, I could make music that way. I could take what I know and turn it upside down and do it like that. So learn not just from music. Use a varied diet. Go see something visual. If you can, pop on a movie if you're into things like that. I love watching how movies are constructed. It takes great film work. That's the technique bit. It takes great writing and knowledge of every other movie that happened to be a great filmmaker. That's the theory bit. See, they have technique. That's the acting bit, the directing bit. They have the theory. They have the gear. And I find watching other artists' work only fuels my own. There's no bit of creative work done ever that doesn't charge me up and make me a better musician later on. Because if I can get back to rehearsing and sounding good and putting my energy into it, then we have better music, then the world gets better music. So that's how I do it. Technique, theory, and gear knowledge. That's what we're going to be talking about in this show. And I am super stoked. Oh, we've got a lot to talk about, but I can't wait to hear your ideas. Would you leave me a comment in the show notes? I would appreciate it very much. If you get over to Seeing Music Books, download it's called the Achieve Your Dreams Guide. We want you to play like you've always dreamt. Achieve Your Dreams. It's free right now on the homepage. Just pop your email in there and you'll be getting that PDF. So, until next week, I'm Andy Schneider. You've been listening to Guitar Nerd, the place for guitar and bass players who want to level up their game, level up that music game. You have amazing music inside of you, and you can get it out. It's just a series of little bits of information to collect over time, and you've come to the right place, my friend. Until next week, we'll see you soon.